15 years ago, I played Monster Hunter Tri, and the series at large for the very first time. I found it obtuse, clunky, and impossibly difficult. After hours of attempted hunts, I discovered Hammer and finally managed to take down the game's first monster, Great Jackie. Veteran hunters know that this is not a big deal, but for a young hunter like me, it felt like I could do anything. This empowering feeling dug its way into my heart. The game got me. I was a monster hunter for life. Fast forward to the present day, and Monster Hunter is a breeze for me. Fights take very little effort, and I felt that way for the first few encounters in Monster Hunter Wilds. But then I faced Alpha Doshaguma, and later the apex of the Scarlet Forest, Uthduna. The intensity went up. The weather became dangerous. My heart rate increased. That old feeling crept in. The feeling that I'm finally home. I'm playing Monster Hunter. It's been 7 years since Monster Hunter World came out and forever changed what a Monster Hunter game could be. Long gone were loading zones and getting left behind on quests. World took many large steps towards making it appealing and accessible to new players. Now, here we stand at the outset of the 6th generation of Monster Hunter, and the developers have done it again. Monster Hunter Wilds is the most open, accessible, and story-rich Monster Hunter to date. Before we go on, I played Monster Hunter Wilds on PS5 Pro, and mostly played in performance mode. I'm happy to report that I experienced a consistently high frame rate, but with noticeably lower textures in some areas. Unlike Monster Hunter games before it, the story takes center stage in Wilds. You, the hunter, are responsible for exploring the Forbidden Lands and escorting a young boy named Nata back to his village after an incident forced him to escape. World, and to a lesser degree Rise, both had more front-facing stories than the games before, but they've never felt as integrated into the experience as it is here in Wilds. Every movement, every motivation is a direct result of the narrative taking place. For the first time ever, your hunter is an actual character in the story with spoken dialogue and an opinion. There are moments in the story where I felt my hunter was so badass because of how he responded to the story. The same can be said of your Palico, who has more to say than ever. My first instinct was to switch my Palico to traditional feline language, but I'm really glad I didn't. Your Palico is also involved in the story, to a lesser degree than your hunter, but there was a cool quirk I wouldn't have experienced had I switched to feline language. There's a scene where you and your Palico are trying to save other felines from a raging Cumatrice. Your Palico speaks to you in your chosen language, but it will speak to the other felines in feline language. It's a small touch, but a really cool one, and one that's representative of the series at large. Monster Hunter has never taken itself too seriously, and that's still true here. Congalala's introduction cutscene being a perfect example. The flatulence has never been this visceral before. I love the narrative structure of the game, and the story it told kept me engaged through to the end. The characters don't feel like they're just there to fill space, but they have personal investment in what's going on. Alma in particular is very protective of Nata, and Nata himself doesn't just stand idly by. There are moments later in the story where there's real tension between the characters, and it had me worried for what might happen to them. Fabius and Gemma returning from Monster Hunter 4 adds a fun layer of continuity for series regulars. I'm really excited to see how people respond to the story. Unfortunately, for as good as the story is, there are some downsides. For one, it keeps you moving at a fairly brisk pace, taking you from locale to locale pretty quickly. So unless you're deliberately stopping to do optional quests and side missions, of which I wish there were more of in low rank, you're going to be moving through the story and locales quicker than you might be used to as a veteran. On the other hand, if you're a newcomer to Monster Hunter, this approach lets you see a lot of the stuff you probably didn't get to see in older titles. In previous entries, a lot of players would throw in the towel before fighting the best monsters, seeing the biggest set pieces, or experiencing the most beautiful and richest environments. Wilds wastes no time ensuring that every player meets those moments without overwhelming them with everything at once. For example, as I was progressing through the story, I found that I couldn't figure out how to upgrade my armor. I just kept making more copies of the same armor I was already wearing. The option at the smithy clearly said upgrade. I thought I was going crazy. Eventually I gave up and kept going through the story, only to find I unlocked the ability to upgrade armor later. As frustrating as that was, it is good for new players, as it gives them one less thing to worry about as they play early on. But it would have been really nice if the word upgrade was left out of the option here. Speaking of armor, you're able to craft new armor right after the opening encounter with Chotacabra. To my surprise, I was able to make nearly the entire set after just one hunt. At first, this worried me that armor would be too easy to make. Crafting armor is a point of pride in Monster Hunter, and it'd be a shame to make it too easy. But I quickly realized that this was again something aimed at new players, and really only applicable to this first hunt. Right away, you can make some cool-looking armor. New players get right into the heart and soul of Monster Hunter, crafting gear, and it's a good call. Also, leaving that one piece that you couldn't finish encourages the player to get that one last part they need to finish the set. Now, newer players experience some of the more exciting and fun parts of Monster Hunter without having to wade through hours of delivering mushrooms, catching bugs, or mining ore. The old-school hunter in me does miss some of that, but at the end of the day, it's more inviting to new players, and that's a good thing. All of that gathering, fishing, and bug catching is still there, but you are rarely demanded to do it. Gathering's no fun without all the luscious environments to do it in, and Wilds delivers. For the first time in Monster Hunter history, there is no separation between hub and hunting ground. Any point while meandering the base camp, you can open your map to survey what's happening in the environment. See a monster you want to hunt? Cool, mark it and set off. You'll walk out of camp and you're in it. You are in the hunt. It seems like such a minor thing, but I can assure you, it's not. There's something magical about having the freedom to walk out into the wilds and fight whatever comes your way. Past titles are full of the post-hunt downtime. You're back at the hub, upgrading gear, buying items, eating a meal. But now, once you've finished a hunt, you're free to just keep hunting. You can stay in the action for as long as you want, which is a boon for the most voracious of hunters, myself included. If your pouch gets full, you can stop at one of your placed pop-up camps and unload and restock as needed. Pop-up camps serve as fast travel points, so the more you have set up, the faster you can navigate the wilds. You'll be able to place more per locale as you progress through the story, as long as you've discovered the places they can be put down. And there are a lot of places to put them. A lot. Some of them are tucked away safely in places where large monsters can't reach, and that's important because if a large monster spots your camp, chances are they'll destroy it. You can choose whether or not you want to take that chance, but ultimately I found that there were enough safe locations spread throughout each locale. You can customize the appearance and amenities at your pop-up camps by locale as well. Most don't offer any gameplay improvements, but these campfires let you sit around with your hunting group, emote, and even play music. Little moments like these are what take the world of Monster Hunter to the next level. As usual, the monsters in Wilds are the stars of the show, and this time they're weirder than ever. Wilds focuses on more grotesque and creepy monster designs than you might be used to. Why does Doshagama's face look like that? Why does Balahara keep puking on me? I don't know, but I love it. In most Monster Hunter games, there are usually one or two monsters that I hate fighting, but that's not true for a single monster here in Wilds. This may be the strongest new generation lineup we've ever gotten. Monsters like Uth-Duna remind me more of the monsters I've come to know and love from past generations. It has a unique ability to create armor on its body using water, serving as the first fight in Wilds where a monster has a truly unique feature that isn't flatulence. This fight in particular felt familiar in a sentimental way. I'm not even quite sure how to describe it. It could be that the entire set piece got me hyped up, but regardless, this was the Monster Hunter I knew. As is true of past titles, Wilds is home to several locales, or hunting grounds. You start in the Windward Plains, a desert-like area with gorgeous, warm-colored foliage and beautiful vistas. Following the Windward Plains, you venture into the Scarlet Forest, and I quite literally mean venture. You go there on foot. The entire map is interconnected, and you can travel directly from one locale to the next riding your Seikret, your new mount, if that's what you want to do. As cool as this is for a Monster Hunter game, I really didn't find any practical use for it. Most of the areas are connected via a long hallway and not in an open-air sense like you'd find in Breath of the Wild. It's still cool, but not as realized as I would have liked. But when you're just wandering around, not hunting monsters, the atmosphere is just so relaxing. There's a quietness to being in the nature of Monster Hunter's world that is so intoxicating. Everything stops, and you can just take it all in. One of Monster Hunter's greatest strengths is seeing nature in action. Herbivores stopping to drink water, the predators of the wilds on the hunt for their next meal, these little weirdo frog birds hanging out. It's all beautiful. I wish the story would have encouraged stopping to take it all in more often. There are a few scripted segments where you observe nature, but ironically, it's anything but natural. Your Seikret is your new best pal in Monster Hunter Wilds, and unlike Palamutes before them, they feel integral to the experience. They carry your quest items, so you no longer go to a box to fetch first aid meds or easy shock traps. They're all carried by your Seikret, and I found that to be easy to forget. Eventually, I did start remembering to check the pouch, but if you're a new player, I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't know it was there. Your Seikret can auto-track whatever you pin on the map, so if you ever get lost and don't know where to go, you can either hit up on the D-pad to auto-track what you're already targeting, or open the map and pin a new target. I personally turned off the setting that has the Seikret auto-track by default, as I preferred steering myself, but being able to toggle on the fly is great. You can even name and customize your Seikret's appearance at a certain point in the story. Here's my Ava Unit 1 colored Seikret named Canvas. He's beautiful and perfect. Probably the most interesting thing your Seikret can do is carry a secondary weapon for you to switch to on the fly. You're no longer forced to just bring one weapon into a hunt. If you're like me, you'll bring 2 hammers of different elemental types. Or if you're more interesting than me, you'll bring 2 entirely different classes with you. The choice is yours. For those familiar with armor skills, you'll know that when building sets, you tailor the skills you use to the weapon class you play. But how do you do that for multiple weapon classes? Well, you don't have to anymore. Weapon-specific and certain attack-based skills can now be found right on your weapon itself. This gives you the freedom to tailor your armor set skills more broadly, and is yet another thing that is more inviting to new players. So if you want to bring a bowgun and a charge blade with you, go for it. This is a great change, and I'm curious what types of builds people will create once the game launches. Fans of classic Monster Hunter will be delighted to hear that the armor and weapon designs are fantastic in Wilds. Look at the Lalabarina armor. Gorgeous. The weapons all play great, and they're enhanced by the combat's new big feature, Focus Mode. Focus Mode allows you to strafe with your weapon and aim directly where you want to attack. This is a game changer. Greatsword players no longer need to worry about whiffing 80% of their true charge slashes, and as a hammer main, I basically never let go of the Focus Mode button. Now I can charge my hammer attack and aim exactly where I want it to go. Some people might think this makes it too easy, but I disagree. This just gives me a level of control I always wish I had. I think Focus Mode will help new players try out some of the trickier weapons from the series, and hopefully broaden the weapons used across the player base. When you're in Focus Mode, you gain access to an attack that can break wounds. Wounds glow red when you're in Focus Mode, and stagger the monster when broken, while also giving you a monster drop. If you're good at making and breaking wounds, you're going to end hunts with tons and tons of monster parts. They feel good to break, and while I think they might appear a bit too much, I always wanted to break them when I saw them. People who know me know that I love playing Monster Hunter multiplayer. This is what the series is meant for. And I'm happy to report that they've made it super easy to play with other people, thanks to some new features and the addition of crossplay. Thank you, Capcom. Returning from World is the Squads feature, which is basically a persistent guild of players that you can easily get into a lobby with. You start with a limit of 10, but as you gain more members, the cap will increase until it eventually caps at 50. You can see who's in a quest by checking with Alma and join freely. If you want to get more granular, you can create a link party inside of a lobby, or even outside, if you have a group of 4 you intend to play with. Anytime another player starts a quest, all other link members will receive an invite to it, even if they're in their own quest currently. This extends to the story as well. In World, every player had to do their own story quest and see the cutscenes before they could join each other in that specific quest. It was a real drag. Story sequences are handled outside of quests in Wilds. That means each player can experience their story cutscenes at the same time, and once the monster encounter begins, can easily join up together to continue playing as a group. It's still not perfect, but for what it is, it's pretty elegant. Replays of Monster Hunter Wilds will be significantly less of a chore than in World, and I'm so grateful for that. If you're a villain, you can even skip cutscenes now, whether you've seen them or not. Please don't do that. Not the first time. Streamers will be happy to know that they can create private lobbies that are only joinable via lobby code, so they can play with their chats. Unfortunately, these are limited to 16 players for some reason. It'd be nice to see this updated to also include 100 players. SOS signals return, allowing random hunters to join your quest. You can also opt to have NPC hunters join your quest instead. Sometimes they join you in the story too. Olivia in particular is really cool, and the time she joined my hunts, I was delighted. NPC hunters generally behave the way you'd want them to, so this will be a great option for solo players who decide they want a little help. The final way to hunt together is via Environment Link, and this is how I wanted to spend most of my time playing with my friends. Environment Link lets your Link members join your instance of the game world and freely explore alongside you. This is most similar to World's Guiding Lands. One of my favorite memories in World is spending an entire day in a single session with my friend Levi, just endlessly hunting whatever happened to show up. Monster Hunter is my ultimate hangout game, and this is the way to do it. Unfortunately, there are some drawbacks to Environment Link, such as not being able to post quests from the quest board, and you'll be stuck at whichever locale you started the link in. So if you do plan to play like this, it probably won't be until the very end game, and I think that's a shame. I joined Steve for the majority of his playthrough, as he's relatively new to Monster Hunter, and I'd be able to help guide him along. If you've tried Monster Hunter or are new to Monster Hunter, listen to what he has to say.
For the last 15 years, Monster Hunter has made me feel like an outsider looking in. Like I wasn't invited to the fun everyone else was having. I had always wanted to love the series, but it felt difficult. Over the last decade and a half, multiple friends would tell me that I just needed someone to show me the ropes. That includes Brandon. But I bristled at the idea that a game couldn't explain itself well enough for me to grasp the basics and at least find the fun. Wild's predecessors lowered the barrier to entry, but didn't remove it. And as usual, the excitement around Capcom's latest entry in the franchise got me wanting to try again. And I'm so glad I did. Instead of lengthy missions focused on foraging, Wilds drops you right into the middle of the action as sort of an on-the-job training for would-be hunters, showcasing the slinger before letting you take a look at each of the weapon choices and practice them before heading out to slay your first monster. Finally, a Monster Hunter game is leading with the good stuff. The stuff that makes you more interested in learning its other mechanics. It's inviting to inexperienced players in a way that previous entries, Rise and World included, just aren't. That first fight with the Chatacabra serves as an induction, an invitation to the inside. I finally get it now. I understand why people obsess over this series. Shortly after slaying my first few monsters, I joined up with Brandon. I had played Monster Hunter games with others before, but I always felt like a hindrance, like I needed to be carried. That simple change-up in how gameplay elements are introduced in Wilds dissolved that feeling completely. Rather than being babysat by a pro, I felt like I was learning from a veteran while still adding something to my team. For the first time in series history, Wilds made me feel capable. It made me feel like I finally understood how to play after 15 long years. When I stood toe-to-toe with the Alpha Doshaguma, an early game boss, I was confident I'd emerge victorious. For a novice like me, it was a hard-fought battle, but I was right. And when I returned to camp, I realized that the light had finally clicked on for me. I'd become a proper Monster Hunter fan.
If you don't want to hear about the endgame of Monster Hunter Wilds, skip to this timestamp. Once you've rolled credits, you'll gain access to High Rank. This is where players will spend the majority of their playtime. Tempered monsters return to World and are at the center of the endgame grind. Tempered monsters are more difficult versions of the monsters and reward you with unique materials called Arshan parts. You can use Arshan parts to craft Arshan weapons, which can then be strengthened further using specific materials. High rank hunts also reward you with decorations, which you can use to add skills to your armor and weapons. Tempered hunts give you decorations with multiple skills. The hunt for these decorations and Arshan parts are the core of high rank, and the most impassioned hunters will spend hours upon hours working towards them. For veteran hunters hoping for an arena, you'll be happy to know that there is one present. Additionally, monsters on your map can be saved as investigations to be fought later. This takes away the stress of seeing a monster that you want to fight but don't currently have the time to. The postgame isn't as ambitious as I would have liked, but what's available here will definitely keep players occupied. Monster Hunter Wilds built an incredible foundation. I'm excited to see how it evolves with its future title updates and the presumed eventual Master Rank expansion. But for now, I intend to play hours and hours of Monster Hunter Wilds with my friends and soak in every moment. The spirit of Monster Hunter is alive and well, and I hope it'll find even more new players than it did in World and Rise before it.